heard on the internet, Christian Catholicism, that if you're doing yoga, it's demonic. So it's like, ever seeing someone and you're ruining their meditative state, it's I don't know. But then when that goes with the same thing, and I know it's accurate, because like when I'm staring into space, I don't do that. So like if you ever see someone staring into space, check in on them. They might not be okay. It's just not normal. And so it's the same thing where they're like, you look at someone but don't stare at them. You know, it's this fine line. And I say a lot of things that are cryptic, I know, and I think that's just... I say a lot of things that are cryptic. And I'm saying a lot of things that are cryptic, and it's just because, like, security. With computer science, it comes down to security, and it's so much of the notion where, and this will be a little abstract, I was like in a Chicago boat tour, and there was this guy who was making, or a tour guide said, this guy making buildings, he makes them like asymmetric because he sees in nature everything is asymmetric, and you know, skyscraper buildings are classically straight and symmetry. So he's trying to do the opposite, and so I thought that's the most artsy thing I can ever think of. And it's probably why he did it, because he thought of it first. But so taking that colloquialism and applying it to outer space, it's like supposed to be uniform in calculations with scientists, but the more that like they look at it, the calculations are off, and that's just because it's been like aged like a fine wine. So of course it would be, but that's like an extension of our nature. So like if you look at the nature on planet Earth, with what that has going in its asymmetry, outer space is like a jacked up version of that, and I bet they complement each other. And so things that are cryptic, you know, it's like, because I'm trying to stylize videos, and I'm going to be a lot more cinematic, but as of now, it's like, I dropped off of TikTok, and here's some information about it. There's only like been 2 instances. One where my friend said they heard someone, I was on an internet website. So that's like fandom 101, when you hear someone call out your name. I didn't hear that directly. So that was on, swear to God, I think Facebook. So it's kind of funny because on Facebook, I've uploaded 2 videos. One where like, it wasn't mine. It was just like some InfoWars site. And so like everyone like around the, not from any of my friends saw this. So I don't know how they got control of like my page. Maybe it got shared. That's the thing. It got shared from my some person that was my friend, and then it got out. So then I was tagged in the sharing, and I noticed that like a whole bunch of, because it was liked, and so when it was liked by different names of people who weren't my friend, I saw that different people, but that's on the internet. I'm talking like in real life when you're walking down the street. So I was at a gas station years ago. My friend said that a guy recognized me on Facebook. So that was the first point. The second point is there's a guy in my high school, Tyler like something, and he said he saw me on TikTok. Okay, so this was when I was on TikTok. The only thing I was successful at, I was like running numbers up with the kids. I noticed I said kids. I know TikTok's aimed for kids, but it's just the cinematics of, you scroll up and it's small shorts, so it doubles as like a comic reel. When you look at the little frames of comic strips, I understood TikTok, it operates like that. So I'm like, wow, there's cinematics imitate comics. So instead of like cryptic cinematics, comic book cinematics. So this is a thing where in TikTok, I was making numbers, and it's because I was jumping off stuff. And so kids love that. Unfortunately, I found out TikTok's ran by China, so that had to go out because I wasn't willing to portray that imagery on a platform run by Chinese. Even though Google is run by YouTube and they've got sent Google out to China, but YouTube was before TikTok, so it's somewhat decent for nostalgic reasons. But the main point in the case is when there's cleavage sites and bondage, cleavage sites and baggage. Yesterday I was talking about how there's like a wall. I said an ice wall, and then there's like a light, and when you're dying, they're like, go away from the light. Or like if you're shutting down, it's like because you've hit an ice wall or something like this, right? So there's not something like that, right? So, you know, you're in the moment of this, and so it's most cinematic thing I can think of, other than that guy's nature in the city. Brilliant stuff. But no, really, this cryptic stuff is just very that. And so I see when there's things that have cleavage sites, I've noticed in technology nowadays in big pharma industries with these cleavage sites, I'm like, this falls upon in the same region where they're working with the quantum computers and particle accelerators. Because when you're doing high-end state-of-the-art type, you know what, it falls into the category of like, oh, this is nothing more than a pinball game, and the cleavage sites are the ball going to it. And when it's in a corner, see, like a cleavage, it can be like in a corner. And so when you're putting stuff on top of something in a corner, the walls hold it. So this is like what bondage is to baggage. And a thing in a bag, it leans to its outer walls of the bag, so it couples the stuff next to it, so it is easier to balance. So this is why cleavage, if you're putting 3 and 3 together, it's easy to see why it would be usable in state-of-the-art equipment, because it's so elementary. Should have opened with that. And just how to stylize frame. I'm gonna get really like into cinematography, but it's like right now I don't want to like put the camera down and get a tripod, because usually I just use it on the back of my bike. But I don't want a bike because biking is like kind of stupid. Surprised I did for that long. I ran through like 7 bikes. I beat the shit out of the bikes. And then but yeah, no, in comic books this is like how to be cryptic. This place, like where I'm at right now, it's like looking something like in the movie Saw, where it's like a fun house kind of thing. And this is like how you do cryptic, as opposed to what Marvel does in classic like film strips that look like a comic book reel. But there's a perfect example. And I don't think that's a better idea, other than to say that, well, first, look at my shirt. It's inside backwards. And when you're wearing something that's backwards, you can call it inside out. That was the main point of Wacky Wednesday. It was like these kids' books. And of course, that with these kids' books, it was like, where's Waldo, but the opposite, because something was missing. And so if that isn't cryptic prima facie, then I don't know what is. And so when things are like a cleavage site, you want to have a true North Star. Yeah, very good. With a true North Star in a cleavage site, I think that you're going to want to have like a true North Star in a cleavage site. And that can't be any more true if you're having like an enclosed capsulation. And this is no exception when it comes to a cell. And so what's inside of a cell is a controlled environment. And so when you have this, it's like the whole thing's in the corner. It doesn't need to be like in an open area. You find a corner for a cleavage site, because when it's things like that, that's how outer space is so pattywonkus, because the starting point, you would think it would be a corner, but the longer that space expands out, like from every other direction, it's called dark energy pulling everywhere. It's upwelling from every other position, that the corner becomes less and less obvious, and so the things in it become more and more arbitrary. The opposite of inside of a cell. Pictures, one was the popcorn. I'm thinking that in nature, how I was saying like stuff on Earth is less of a dissymmetry, a symmetry not aligned, even though it's nature and it isn't supposed to. But in outer space, it's a thing of that on steroids. And so I'm thinking from the perspective, you know, I said Edward Hubble was the guy who looked at the telescope first, And so literally the opposite side of a telescope, it maximizes the projection of the thing pointed through it. So his eyeball was like this giant like bat signal on the other end being projected out into outer space. And it's really funny because like there was this supernova, a few of them actually, and they portray an iris perfectly just with its gaseous state. And I'm thinking that's probably like people's eyeballs that have been poking into outer space. And you can look at that as cryptic, but the more you get like legitimate about anatomy, this is why on YouTube you can't show blood, because it's cryptic, but it's just fundamentals of anatomy, and you see the catch-22. And this is hand in hand with not giving medical advice. And so without getting cryptic, it's like the if the popcorn in this image was like a cutout, of like the representation, because you know how like there's styles and like these toys, like some of them have big heads and eyes. I don't know the name of them, I don't collect stuff, but Beanie Babies, they all had that look. And you've got stylized stuff, and so like in Family Guy or The Simpsons. And so like if like outer space had this same style with looking at what Earth has, and so it would probably look like this popcorn or something, you know, like it. Finding that style is probably what in the fundamental constituents have going with it that you can capitalize off it. If you just know a few things like cleavage sites, baggage, and bondage, you can denote its style rather with ease. Secondly, with this cleavage, this is what a gate, if you go past it, it starts like polarizing. And so this is off of cleavage sites, of course, like we were saying earlier. And so if you move really fast, like 100 miles per hour, it's going to look like this imagery. And the more that you have these things in between them, it's going to polarize them like